All right. When I first heard about senior year project, I thought what most people think, great, an opportunity to make a book about the Civil War. And so there's this second part to it, which you're aware of, which is the paper aspect. And I knew less what to do with that. I didn't really know. I knew I needed to research the book, but I mean, there's so much general research that needs to go in if you're going to actually make a book about the Civil War, a children's book, historical fiction, more or less. I didn't know exactly which aspect of that to look at. And so I started thinking about what I needed to know to make my character breathe the most. And my talk today will mostly be, it'll be in two parts. One will be about that research and what I found. And the second part will be about how I applied that to the narrative and in general, how information informs narrative and just makes narrative truer, and where we have to fill in the blanks for what we don't know, and where at some point we're going to have to start improvising and start thinking of things on our own, where the author takes over for the historian. So I was thinking, what is a question I could ask? We go the right way. And I was thinking, well, my character's got to decide to do this. Almost everyone in the Civil War enlisted. The draft was not implemented until 1863, I believe. And at that point, there were riots. Like, very, very few people were drafted into this conflict. Almost everyone decided to go. And I thought that that would be an interesting question. Why would he go? Why did anyone go? Well, why did anyone go is, for one thing, he will soon discover, a very large question. It's also been done numerous times. This is James McPherson's The Cause and Comrades. It's more or less on that subject. So I started thinking, well, these are the basic reasons why people are first inspired to go to war in general. Believes in the cause of the war, or in some way gains something from one side winning. This includes the honor and glory of defending your homeland. That sort of wraps up the causes of the war. You were fighting for the causes of the war. Love of adventure, courage, peer pressure, collective enthusiasm, or an exterior force such as the church encouraging them to fight. Money, the mercenary incentive, and some other benefit. Like it's as miscellaneous as that, but another reason. And I just want to quickly read a quote here. A soldier has but one thing in view, and that is to fight the battles of his country with honor, having a likening for all his brothers in arms, and the blessing of God and the prayers of his friends at home. That was Abraham Lincoln's response to why he believes all these men are fighting for him. And so I was thinking, well, we're told to dig up a controversy, look for something that doesn't make sense, doesn't add up. I was thinking, well, who might have fought in the war who just had either no reason to care about or an aversion to the causes of it? And I was thinking, well, if it's about, so the Civil War is in two parts. It's to defend the Union, that's the official cause, and to abolish slavery. That's the underlying cause. That's where the conflict is coming from. That's the argument between the North and the South. Who just would not care about the Union? Well, people who aren't from here, immigrants, people who have just arrived in this country, who have no ties to it. The Stars and Stripes is not their flag. They don't have this patriotism for this country. If anything, they still have strong feelings of patriotism for their old country. On top of the fact that this time in America is one of the greatest eras of immigration that we've ever had. This is right before the Ellis Island boom, but right after sort of this locked gates policy that we had for a very long time. And then I thought even more, well, what about, who might not slavery be something you would wish to fight for? And as we will later delve into why this is, but the Irish, who are both immigrants and have no reason and, in fact, all the incentive to not abolish slavery, why would they fight in the war? And so my book became about, it is entitled The Irish Volunteer. Why would he volunteer to do this? And what's more, 150,000 Irishmen volunteered. They volunteered in massive numbers. They were as in support of this war, which they had seemingly no reason to be, as any demographic in the entire Union Army. So there was my controversy. I'd found it, and so I pressed on. Well, why did they come here? The main reason was the Irish potato famine. In Ireland, their staple crop, to say it's their staple crop is really an understatement. It's all they ate. If you were a poor, there was no really middle class in Ireland. It was still sort of a feudal system. You more or less, you lived on your landlord who, you grew other things. You grew other things, but he took them all and left you literally with just your potatoes, which is a decent food to have if it's the one food you're gonna have. It's very high in just about all of your basic materials, basic needs that minerals, etc. It's really easy to grow. It's very easy to grow. It has one drawback, and that's it dies very easily. So in 1845, a fungus infected the potato farms in Ireland. By the end of the year, over half of the plants were dead. Irish farmers, fearing eviction, sold their successful crops to the rich. The British did not help the situation by subsidizing the farms. They just sort of thought the markets would recover on their own, which maybe they would have, but the fungus just got worse and worse and worse year after year after year. And at the end of it, over 1 million Irish died and 1 million more fled. And they almost all fled to America. Now, before we get to that, I just wanted to briefly say the only the only information I had about the Irish enlisting in the war was this one scene from the film Gangs of New York, where you see all of these Irish immigrants coming off the boats, much the way mine would have, but in like 1861, and they descended from the boat straight to the place where they were declared to be in America, not citizens, but they were given the right to enter the country. And then they went to another table where they signed up for the military, and they got right on another boat. While that sort of makes sense, okay, it's the heat of the moment, it's flustered. It's also sort of a microcosm. You could sort of see where that inspiration is coming from. It's also not. It's a very small portion. Many, if not most, of the Irish were already here. Year of the population, 1790. This is the Irish population, and it's kind of deceiving because most of these people aren't really Irish. They're Scots-Irish. But 300,000, mostly Presbyterian Scots-Irish. 1790, get out of your way here. 962,000. 1850 to 1860, the population of the Irish rose to 1.7 million. And this is sort of the climate of their entrance to America. This is basically what happened. America said, oh, great, you have all of these people who need our help, and we need them. We need these cheap laborers. We have back bays to fill in and bridges to build. Send them. They sent far too many. They sent far, far too many. And America just ended up with all of these Irish they did not need, nor did they want. And there was no way of sending them back. There was no return policy. So this great animosity builds to the Irish. Now, we'll get into that more specifically. But just what I discovered was that the three core reasons that the Irish enlisted in the war is born out of the situation that they came to America in. Both the reasons they left, they were this poor race that was looked down upon. They were looked down upon for eating potatoes, even though it was all they were given. The common theme in Europe was that, well, if they eat potatoes, they're worthy to eat potatoes and nothing else. And they were also Catholics, which just does not bode well in the United States, which is mostly Protestant, especially where they end up. And out of that climate, three things come about. One, they're poor. The economic incentive is there, and how. They are actually, out of all of this, come out with this profound desire to preserve the Union. And we'll get into why that is. And depending on the source you ask, some historians that I spoke with believe that this is the major one. It is to stake claim for a legitimate place in the American society and a piece of the American dream. They saw this war as an opportunity to finally be more than what they had been for the last 400 years. They saw this as an opportunity to raise above the just common downtrodden that they had been given, and have a legitimate place in society. And to a large extent, they were successful in doing that. So I'm going to talk about the economic reasons briefly. So this is just, I think this paints a pretty good picture of the sort of state of their affairs. This is Boston. Mass unemployment, too many unskilled laborers. They all came with equally no skills. They were all potato farmers, which basically means you do nothing. Of the roughly 24,000 Irish in Boston old enough to work, 14,000 were employed. So you have 10,000 unemployed out of 24,000. Of the unemployed, 9,000 were unskilled day laborers. The remaining 5,000 were spread over 300 occupations. that isn't a very, and that's 300 of about 1,000 occupations. It's very undiverse. To give you a comparison, the 650 of the 13,500 Massachusetts-born residents, who you may notice are outnumbered by the Irish-born residents in Boston, are spread over 650. So you have so that's double. Now, so you have all of these people working the same job interchangeably. At no point are the majority of Irish, at least in Boston, employed consistently. They're not getting a steady paycheck. If they're getting this bad factory pay every other month is more or less what you get. Now, their pay in the Army is about the same. You don't make a lot if you're in the Army. You make just about as little as you would working in a factory, but you get it every month. On the month it comes. You also get a meal every day. You get 2 meals every day. You get a roof over your head. It's something to do. You are very much employed as long as you are enlisted in the United States Army. And I found through various journals that I read that was just a major driving factor, is this idea that we're just going to be provided for by the military. All right, preserving the Union. It is almost irrelevant why individual Irishmen wanted to preserve the Union. A lot of one major reason is a lot of them felt this immense gratitude to this country, even though it hates them. They still feel this gratitude because they saved them from the horrors of the potato famine. But that's not even the main reason. The main reason is that the Catholic Church was in favor of preserving the Union, and where they said to go, the Irish went. An example of this is in the election of not 1960, 1860. The opponent to Abraham Lincoln was the Democrat Frederick Douglass. The only 2 districts in Boston of the 9, I believe, that Douglass won were the 2 Irish districts. The 2 Irish districts that had been commanded by the Catholic Church via the Boston Pilot, which is the first and oldest Catholic newspaper in the United States. It's still available down at Boston College. You can still view the microfilm. They have all of it. You can see they unequivocally support the Democrat in droves. In complete mass do they go with them. So it's not surprising that there's a connection to that. I mean, clearly that influence is visible. And so when on April 27,